Hello and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, Timo Albers Daily. Joining me this week is IMSA Racing Driver and 2 times IMSA Champion Taylor Hagler. Having first chatted back in 2021, we decided we were overdue for a catch-up, and so fixed that by chatting about how her career has gone since then, what it was like winning that second IMSA Championship, why she's now taking on the Nürburgring, how she's handling the pressure that comes with the ascension further up the motorsport ladder, and I asked her the all-important question of whether she'd rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck. I hope you enjoy our conversation. So, hi Taylor, thank you very much for being here today. First of all, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, we first chatted back in 2021 after you'd won the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge TCR Championship with Michael Lewis. I want to know how you would sum up your career since then.
My career since then has kind of been on the same level I think it was in 2021. Michael and I went back and won the championship in 22. Pretty much the same way, just like one win overall and just consistency. And this year has kind of started out a little rocky. We had some mechanical issues at Daytona, and the team did a really good job of getting the car back out, surprisingly. So we still finished 8th, I think only like 21 laps down, but I mean, it was good points. We still finished 8th. And then Sebring, we finished 5th, which was, again, good points, not the finish we wanted, but points are points. So far we've only had those 2 races. We'll see how there's.
So I want to go back slightly to doing the double last year in TCR, and I'm curious. Like you said, you had 1 win, but you're on the podium for 7 of the 10 races, and really showing that consistency. There's a couple more podiums, I think, than the previous year. How did it compare for you to 2021? And was that year more satisfying, or was the first time still the more satisfying of the 2?
I think 2022 was a little bit more satisfying. I feel like the competition was a bit stronger. Like in 2021, we had, I think, 4 cars under the Hyundai tent. 2 were the Velosters and 2 were the Elantras. So the Elantras were still kind of getting figured out and getting dialed in. So they had some issues. So that kind of helped us out there. And there's a little bit less competition. And I think the field was a little bit smaller in 21. So then 22, we were all in the Elantras. We had 6 cars just between our field, which is half the TCR field, with all stellar drivers. So like that was a big competition added. And then at that point, like Hyundai had so many championships that I feel like every other manufacturer was out for blood. And I think we definitely had to work a bit harder. 21, we had the championship wrapped up by, I think, VIR. So Atlanta, all we had to do was take the green flag. So that wasn't quite as satisfying as having to fight for it like we did in 22. And the championship
you prefer that kind of a fight then?
Yeah.
Get down all the way.
Yeah. So we could have had it wrapped up at VIR in 2022, but I don't even remember what happened at that point. There was 1 race in the season that kind of like screwed it, but Atlanta, we actually had to like fight for the championship, which was a very chaotic race. We got T-boned pretty early on in the race and then had a radio miscommunication. So I ended up doing a drive-through, which wasn't necessary. And so we ended up like half the track back. Like they were all I think I was probably like a minute away from the field. So that one was a little nerve-wracking.
That we to give yourself a challenge there, clearly.
Yeah. So, and we actually ended up, that was the first year that I actually podiumed at Atlanta as well. So we actually ended up on the podium and the championship. And that one I think was a little bit more like emotional and felt a little bit more like.
You get the champagne properly then.
Yeah. So.
Did you feel like you were under more pressure last year to win overall, or was it the opposite cases? You knew you could definitely do it because you'd done it the year before?
Yeah, I didn't feel like a lot of pressure last year just because it was kind of just like, oh, we won 1 championship, beginner's luck type of thing. If it happens again, great. If it doesn't,
it was hell of beginner's luck if it was.
So yeah, like if it happened again, like we were going to be pretty happy about it, but like we kind of both Michael and I had the mentality of like 2021 no longer exists. We're moving into 22. Forget what happened. Just go in with a clean slate. And that was kind of supposed to be my mentality this year, but I feel like with 2 championships now trying to go into a third, there's definitely a lot more pressure there, especially like we're already pretty far down in the points as it is with this season starting. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like make up this year versus like last year.
I was going to say, how easy was it for you to actually be in that mindset for last year from 21 to say, oh, it's clean slate? Because it's one thing to say it, but then another thing maybe it creeps in a bit. And you're saying this year it's not quite as straightforward for that. So I'm intrigued about that from your perspective.
Yeah, so like last year was pretty easy for me to get into that mindset because like it was only the one championship. And I feel like we kind of got pretty lucky in some scenarios in 2021 where a lot of the people that we were battling against or that was going to be our main competition, they had some mechanical issues or they ended up getting in wrecks or whatever, and we just managed to stay clean and stay out of all of that. So like getting into that mindset in 22, I think was a bit easier just because that was kind of my first championship. It didn't really resonate with me. It didn't really feel real until it happened again in 22. So getting into that mindset in 22 it was pretty easy because I still feel like I was very new and I didn't have like a lot of high expectations. Figuring out like, again, like a new car. So I didn't have a lot of expectations like, okay, we're going to be in a new car this year. We never really know what's going to happen. Like we're figuring out this car's a lot different. So the expectations weren't quite there, whereas they are this year because same car we had last year. We know the car, we know the tracks, we know we're capable of 2 back-to-back championships. So like now it's a little bit harder to get into that mentality because like I know what we're capable of. So not fulfilling those same expectations of like, okay, we finished second at Sebring the last 2 years back to back. Like this should be a no-brainer. It should be easy to finish on the podium again. And then like not finishing on the podium is like, okay, it's not going to be as easy as I thought I was. Like expectations are a little bit higher this year than they were last year.
And from a sense of it, then it comes across that when you won the championship last year for the second time, then it was almost like a double tap in a way that you then finally kind of accepted that you won the championship the year before as well. Is that kind of how it was?
Yeah. Like I am a very humble person. I'm not the first person to like brag on myself or mention championships or even mention that I'm a race car driver to begin with. So I'm the first person to be like, oh, like we won the championship in 21. It was beginner's luck. We just managed to stay consistent. I have a great co-driver that did like a lot of the work. And so I'm the first person to do that. So then like the 2021 championship, while it meant a lot to me and it was a great accomplishment, I didn't really dwell on it a lot. I didn't think about it a lot. It didn't quite feel.
So it's a long time for it to sink in.
Yeah. So then like once we went back and won it in 22, I was like, oh, I guess I did do some work. I guess like I did actually like help win this 2 years in a row. And it kind of sunk in and resonated a little bit more after that.
So then focusing back on this, you tell us a bit more in detail about how it's gone so far. Like you say, Daytona was challenging and seems insane in some ways that you could be 21 laps down but still be P8 and in the points. But Sebring was pretty decent from another perspective. Obviously, you've got your own expectations there, like you say. So are you disappointed with how it started, or are you kind of just not getting ahead of yourself in some ways because there's still a majority of the season left?
I mean, it's kind of both. I set such high expectations for like Daytona and Sebring in the beginning of the season because that's kind of how it went last year. And like I know what we're capable of. So I had those same expectations of like, okay, well, like we podiumed at Daytona last year, should be pretty easy to do again this year. We podiumed at Sebring the last 2 years, should be super manageable. So to set those expectations for myself, and then like not accomplish them for reasons out of anyone's control. That's kind of a letdown, but then I also have to, like you said, remind myself like we have 8 more races this season. Like it's a long year. We have a big break. We have some tracks coming up that I feel like I excel more at. Like Daytona and Sebring are just not my strong tracks. and we have a lot more tracks coming up that I feel like I am a bit stronger at and that the car is a bit stronger at. But we do have some new cars coming in, like Honda has their new car that we've been around when they were testing, and like that's a pretty good car. The new Audis are a really good car. So I really wanted to have like the points lead early on before those new cars came in, just so we had that little bit of a buffer. And we don't have that buffer. We're, I think, like 8th in the points right now. So definitely not anywhere near close to like what we want to be. So that definitely gives me like a little bit of anxiety going into the rest of the season of like, how are we going to make this up? How are we going to get this buffer? What are we going to do? Like, competition's a lot stronger. How are we going to handle that? What are we going to change? But
surely that makes you more determined at the same time, no?
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, that's one thing that like Michael really helps me out with, is he's very much a very grounded person and has taught me a lot just from like a mental standpoint on like, last race didn't happen. This is a clean slate. New year, you never know what can happen. Like, just consistent points, because we've proven like that's what can win championships. You don't always have to podium. So,
well, no, we've seen that a lot in other championships as well over the last couple of years. It's been people who are winning overall, they've got very few wins to their name, and you're trying to think, how the heck did you manage to pull that one off? And then you say, oh, okay, you're just sneaking in the top 5 pretty consistently and getting on the podium.
Right,
it's not always that win. So it's like you say, that P5 in Sebring, you might be disappointed with that, but it might be something that is key later on.
Right, yeah. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
And as well, I suppose you can't be, I think, is it easier for you as well to look at those 2 races and think, because of the reasons for not doing as well, like you say, it was kind of out of your control, does that make it a bit of an easier pill to swallow, because it's not something that, you know, you didn't drive the opposite way around the track or anything silly like this, you know, it was just out of your hands, and that's racing sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely does make it a little bit easier, because it's not something that was at the fault of me nor Michael. It's definitely very much just like Daytona was out of our control, is out of everyone's control. And like Sebring, we tried our hardest, but the competition just kind of wasn't really there. And like I drove to my best ability, and so did Michael. And that's just kind of where we ended up. And it makes it a little bit easier. I mean, like, I kept the car clean. I didn't go out there and wreck it. And that's kind of what my job is. And Michael did the same, and he did his job. So it does make it a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier of a pill to swallow, since like no one went out there and just decided to be stupid.
Always helpful.
Yeah.
This year as well, you're also on the road to 24 Hours at the Nürburgring, and you've just had a race there earlier this month with a P8 finish. What made you want to go and do this?
It was actually something that Hyundai brought to us at the very beginning of the year. They had tried to do it back in 2020. And pretty much like right when everyone was going to leave for Germany to start doing this trip, the pandemic hit.
I was going to say one guess as to why that didn't happen.
Yeah. So they weren't able to do it. And it got brought up again for this year. And I was fortunate enough that they wanted to bring me along, since obviously I wasn't with them in 2020 and wasn't a part of the original group. I was very fortunate that Brian and Hyundai wanted me to join in on this experience. And to say it's been an experience is an understatement. That track is pretty crazy. Was not expecting anything like that. Definitely, I did some like sim work, but actually driving
can't compare to the real thing.
Does nothing. Sim does nothing for it. So it's been fun. We did the little academy thing. And that was very insightful. That was very helpful. And then we pretty much flew, well, not pretty much, we did. We flew straight from the academy to Sebring for the race, and then left the same day as our race, hours after our race. We flew out to go back to Germany for the first VLN race of the season. And yeah, we had an 8th place finish, which was crazy in its own. I think me and Michael were 8th, and Harry and Mason were 6th out of, I think, 14 or 15 cars. So for a first race on that track, I think that's
Not too
more
shabby.
expected. Like everything was fine, kept the car clean, which was definitely a feat in its own. Because I mean, like you're out there with all of the pro GT3 drivers trying to learn a track while make sure to stay out of their way, use your blinkers. It's definitely something to try and get used to. But we leave tomorrow to go back for the second VLM of the season. So maybe that one will be a little bit better since like we kind of all know what to expect.
I'll say two things on that. First one being because you were saying that you went literally from Sebring right back there and you'd come straight from there as well. How was that kind of mentally for you switching between things so quickly? Was it quite easy to do that, or because you just didn't have a choice to focus, or were you just like constantly in the zone?
It wasn't really hard to focus. I will say that like the jet lag was pretty rough. That was pretty
Especially
rough.
back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, like different time zones within a 11-day period, especially because like we hit daylight savings while we were over there.
just
And like
just because it wasn't bad enough.
right. So definitely like multiple different time zones within an 11-day period. That was pretty rough. And like trying to force yourself to go to sleep at night and try and like reacclimate as fast as you could to the next time zone was pretty rough. I think I'm maybe finally now over the jet lag. It hit me pretty hard last week while I was home. But from like a mentality focus standpoint, I don't feel like it was that tough for me.
It's just here's the car, here's the track, get on with it.
Yeah, like it's kind of one of those things where like I can be as tired as I want to be. I can be like as unfocused as I want to be. Like the second I'm in the car, like it's just like a auto response to be like, okay, driving, racing, track, car, that's it. That's
And
like all
about. I mean, it's useful to have that. At least you're not having to worry about that at all.
Yeah.
But then again, the Nürburgring, it's one of those tracks. It's a bit like Le Mans, a bit like Bathurst, in the sense that getting round it in one piece and being able to just finish the race is its own kind of achievement. Was that more or less the aim for that first race that you had, and you finished wherever you finished, and you kind of didn't have too many expectations for that, or what were you kind of hoping to get from that first race?
Yeah, I mean, like I think that's really going to be like our focus of these 3 VLM races that we have to do. Because you have to have 3 of them in order to get your grade A license to run the 24-hour. So kind of the entire purpose of this was just go out, get some laps down, keep the car in one piece, figure out how to manage traffic, and just like really learn the track. And bring the car home in one piece is like the main thing. So once we get through these 3 VLM races, then we have the qualifying race. And I think like the mentality will kind of be the same at that point. I don't think like we'll really go into like full race mode until like the 24. So our entire expectation out of this is just keep the car in one piece and figure out how to manage the track and the traffic.
No, definitely. And I think as well, maybe if this is something that repeats itself for you over the next year or two, perhaps then this year is one of those kind of just find your feet moments and make sure that you get all the basics nailed down, and then at least you've got all that experience in your back pocket.
Right, exactly. And like it's always great to have that like Nürburgring license or the permit.
It looks nice.
Yeah, it looks nice, but like it's also just like very useful. And it doesn't expire for a while. So it's always something that I feel like gives you a little bit of like an advantage or an opportunity as a driver, because there's plenty of drivers in Europe that have it, but there's not a lot of drivers in the States that have it. So if there's in the future a team that wants to go run, or Hyundai wants to run again next year, like we all already have this, so we don't have to go through this whole process again.
Yeah. Last time we spoke as well, you said that fighting for the championship in 2021 was the most challenging part of your career to date. Is that still the case, or is there something else that's come along that's become more challenging for you?
I definitely think that like probably at this point in my career, the most challenging thing has got to be like this whole Germany trip that we're doing. It's a whole different experience now when like learning how to manage the traffic on the track and like that extent of a track. With I think we're running the 15-mile or 13-mile, something like that. That's unlike any track we have in the States, not to mention most European tracks are a little bit more technical than the tracks we have in the States. So just like figuring out that aspect of it and managing all this travel and the jet lag and kind of learning how to deal with that is never something I've had to like do. So this is definitely probably the biggest challenge that like I've had so far.
Just the Nürburgring to throw that one at you.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself as a bit of a role model now then? And if so, how does that impact how you behave on and off track?
I think that ever since I've started racing, even when I was doing like TCA with SRO, I was very particular about what I would share on social media and how I would act on track, off track, whatever. More along the lines of just like, one, I like to keep my personal life private. I don't like I don't like to share a lot of that. It does end up on like my social media every now and then, but not large chunks of it. But I don't really know if I ever quite at that point did it based out of being like a role model. I think it was more along the lines of
you just want to keep working personal separate.
Yeah, that plus like, cancel culture started to be a thing and social media bullies are a thing. So I was just kind of like, I want to keep this very
not worth the hassle.
Yeah, like I just want to keep this very professional, very respectful, and just like leave it at that. And that's kind of how I've always managed myself, social media, and always managed my life off track. Even if I'm at the racetrack, I'm still try to come off that way. But like as the years have gone on now with the championships and being in the position that I'm in, it's definitely transitioned a little bit more into like role model style, I guess, with people that we talk to about like sponsorships. I want to make sure that like they're good companies, they send a good message. I'm not out here trying to get like liquor companies and stuff like that, which like don't get me wrong. Wouldn't
Time
mind.
and place.
Time and place type of thing. So it's definitely kind of transitionary, particular about what we post, how we respond to things, comments, who we align ourselves with, and it's definitely come off a little bit more on the like role model side now.
Are there a couple of tracks that you'd love to race on, either in America or globally, that you haven't had the chance yet?
I feel like in the States I've raced it majority of the tracks that like most people know or that I feel like are decent. Definitely there's a lot more in Europe that I want to run. I obviously would love to do Le Mans. I mean, like that's just an iconic
You want to
track.
explain that one to me?
Yeah, that one would be really fun. And then I would love to run the track in Dubai. Just because I've always wanted to go to Dubai. So like that's just kind of an excuse.
Is a good way to kill two birds with one stone there.
Yeah, it's just kind of an excuse to go. I've already run Nürburgring, so that one's kind of in there. I've done Portimao. That one is crazy.
Do you think you'd be interested in doing something like the European Le Mans series at some point then? Or...
Oh, I would love to. Yeah. That's kind of the goal at some point is I would really love to run mainly in Europe. I think there's a lot more opportunity there.
No, definitely.
The tracks, I think, are just a lot more technical and unforgiving. So I think the European tracks definitely mold you into, I think, a better driver, which is why we have a lot come from Europe down here and a lot of teams bring them over is because, I mean, I have seen the way that Germans drive on regular streets. So I understand it now.
It'd be also quite interesting to see as well what you'd be like then racing in America after you'd done maybe a season or two in Europe to see the performance difference perhaps and how you would approach the American circuits.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think even just running Nürburgring helped out a lot just with Sebring because I think during practice or qualifying or race, whatever it was, this past Sebring race, I think I ran like my fastest time to date there. So just that quick transition. Like you pick up small things and like you get confidence, especially running a track like Nürburgring and being able to not crash your like first couple laps out and like actually figure out a track like that and run somewhat decent times like that just kind of gives you confidence in its own.
No, I always find that fascinating. Few fun questions to finish off then that have nothing to do with motorsport whatsoever. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck?
I have no clue. I
Why
don't
does
really
this
know.
question make people speechless? It's great every
Yeah,
time.
like I don't really even know like what would be better. What would you do?
I think I've said before I'd go for the 100 duck-sized horses because I'd try and like get them into a narrow place where they can only come in so many at a time, and I can get them easier. Because if otherwise it's going to be tricky. But because otherwise you've got a massive duck with size, you've got a massive thing that beak is going to come for you. Then I feel that's going to be trickier if you don't have anything to hand.
I guess that makes sense. What if you're just like out in the open?
Then I hope you can run quickly. Either way.
Either way,
You're just getting a car and you'll try and escape that way. I don't know. I'm always hoping that I'm in a good enough scenario where I can box them in a little bit, because otherwise then I'm having to think a bit more. Because clearly I've not thought about this at all, but
no, there's no analyzing that. No, I think I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one.
okay. And then being from Texas, I've got to try this one. Did you watch Dallas? And if so, which character do you most relate to?
I didn't.
Damn.
No.
Oh, it's worth a try. I've got a backup question in case you hadn't, so we're all good. Do you have a favorite breed of horse, and do you get the chance to ride often anymore? Because I know that you had that in your background before you got into racing.
Yeah. I don't really feel like I have a favorite breed of horse. I think regardless of the breed, it's really personality that makes the horse versus the breed. I mean, I've had a warm blood that was more psychotic than a thoroughbred that I've had, so, which is very uncharacteristic. But I have not ridden in 4 or 5 years.
Damn.
Yeah, so I had a little quarter horse that I had at my parents' house that I bought just for Sunday rides, whatever. But once I moved out, I wasn't gonna pay $4,000 a month for boarding and food.
No, it's one thing doing either being a full-time horse person or a full-time race car driver. You need a bit more money to do both.
Right. So yeah, once I moved out, we sold him, and I haven't ridden since.
Well, hopefully you can literally get back on the horse at some point soon.
The plan one day, once I'm very, very rich and can afford both. You know,
Only a matter of time, I'm sure.
dreams. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, and I thank you very much for your time and wish you the best of luck with everything else for everything you're doing this year.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Taylor for coming onto the Kerbs with me. I can't wait to see how she gets on in the rest of the 2023 racing season. If you want to follow Taylor's career, links to her socials will be in the description below, so do go and check those out. Join me again next time when I'll be chatting to another famous face from the world of motorsport. In the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, as well as check out the back catalogue of episodes on the On the Kerbs channel. If you want even more from me, you can listen to me chat about everything Formula 1 over on the Undercut Podcast, as well as delving into the world of Nitro Rallycross over on the Nitro RX Podcast. Both are available wherever you get your podcasts. As for written content, I currently write for Is It Fast, Paddock Sorority and Paddock Passion, so be sure to check all of them out with original pieces released each week. All of the information links for those will be in the description below, as well as my Instagram handle if you want to go and follow me there. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be back soon with another episode.